So that's made it a bit more accessible to people. And so this scholars group, and I thought these were all good guys, but I later found out, for example, I'll give you a couple of examples. So I got into this group. Stephen E. Jones started a forum, and it was in an archaeology bulletin board system that he'd set this up. So it was within an area that he'd already set up, which I thought was slightly odd. I mean, if we've got this site of academics, why haven't they got their own site, with a forum bolted onto it, because we had one for our UK forum, which I'd helped to set up in 2005. So I thought that was a bit odd. And then Jones would not talk about the free fall time, or of the towers. Well, they didn't fall, but the time that it took the towers to disappear, Stephen Jones didn't really want to talk about that. But to me, that was a bit odd, because you could see that was anomalous. You could prove it mathematically very quickly, very simply, with the equations of motion, which I've talked about before. And but I just thought, oh, well, maybe he just, he's a professor, so he obviously has other reasons for thinking that's not as important as whatever he's talking about, And then certain things were being promoted, such as this thermite paper and the talk of molten metal, and then analysis of this dust that allegedly had come into the possession of the group through someone called, I'm trying to remember her name, I can't remember her name, Jeanette McKinley, I think was her name, and she'd got this dust sample from her window ledge, and then that was allegedly sent to Stephen E. Jones or something. And then he was able to get that tested, and that's when he said, "Oh yeah, we think it's thermite that was used," And I've written a whole lot about, again, even forgetting what we just talked about with the brilliance of the reaction. There's many other things related to that, and it becomes clear why they particularly chose thermite over just some more sort of fancy named chemical or compound like RDX or whatever. If you study it, it becomes clear why they decided on this cover story.
Thermite's the name itself is almost branded now, especially with the 9/11 quote unquote truthers. It's kind of like a brand. It's when anyone hears thermite, they don't think sparklers or railroad tie cutting things. They think, oh, 9/11, that's what did it. And it's kind of people don't realize that these things get embedded into people's minds, and the average person is just going to go float through life, and just pick up keywords. And if they hear thermite, it's no matter what, it's just going to muddy up the waters. And if anything, that's what it does. It keeps them further away from the truth. So you were kept busy too, you and Dr. Wood, while you were in this group. Can you just talk about that for a bit?
Yeah, well, I suppose there were two things I'd mention in relation to that. Is that eventually what happened was, Dr. Judy Wood had started to get a bit of attention because she was posting a lot of evidence, basically. I think people were kind of looking at this evidence and thinking, oh, my God, yeah, what's that all about? I better go and check that out. And so I think that was starting to happen a little bit. And I think one of the people that first kind of cottoned onto this was Morgan Reynolds, and he was looking at it, because Dr. Wood was on her own at first, really. And then Dr. Morgan Reynolds, he kind of looked in, and I think in the end they got together and decided to write an article. And Morgan was very interested in the plane crashes, so he wrote an article about that. And Dr. Wood was very interested in how the buildings disappeared. So they wrote this joint article, but it was also kind of like a critique of Stephen E. Jones as well, because they were trying to talk about the evidence that he didn't want to talk about, and he was trying to minimise and ridicule and this sort of thing. So they kind of put that all out, and that was August 2006 when that happened. And they called the article, they originally called it "What's Wrong with Stephen E. Jones" or something, but then they decided that perhaps that, a better title would be "Why Did the Twin Towers Completely Disintegrate?" Because Jones had written this paper called "Why Did the Towers Collapse?" or "Why Did the Towers collapse?" And then he changed it to "Why Did the Towers Completely Collapse?" because he had to acknowledge that there was basically nothing left of the buildings, or very little left of them commensurate with the original size. And so really I began to see that there was something going on in relation to what Dr. Wood was posting. And then I eventually heard this sort of, it's now almost within our circles, it's become almost sort of famous when this Jim Fetzer character, he decided that he had to back Dr. Wood and give her a platform on his podcast thing, which was, I think, an auspicious day, which was November the 11th, 2006. So, of course, that's the anniversary today, because that was, so that was 8 years ago now that happened.
8.
And I remember seeing some emails where Dr. Wood expressed some surprise that Fetzer had actually seemingly changed his tune, having ridiculed her for several months or weeks or months, and said, can't talk about this no planes nonsense, and all that. And in fact, we've got an email from Fetzer saying that even if the no planes issue turned out to be true, there were no planes, he wouldn't tell anybody. We've actually got that in email from him.
Well, it's funny because you listen to any of his presentations, even in the time that he was supporting Dr. Wood, and there's always a thing or two there that he makes sure to say a certain way, or he brands something, or he twists, even like nobody really put his back against the wall. He has that kind of personality, it seems like, where somebody can just like, I mean, to me, he's that type of character where you're just like, there's something you're unsure, but you didn't want to say anything, and to you guys it must have been like, well, he's helping us, I guess, but he's not, so we might as well, if he's gonna, he was on mainstream TV, so hey, if I can associate with somebody that could possibly put me in that position, I think that it'd be a sacrifice. But then again, he's gonna spin your information, and that's exactly what he did he not?
Well, you got it down to a T there. I mean, that's what I tried to write up in the book, in the 9/11 Finding the Truth. I wrote up all that and put all the evidence there. And it's quite long-winded, but basically, yes, what he did was, the way that it unfolded was, I started off and I was posting stuff on these forums. So somebody was tracking what I was doing, I think, and they thought, this guy's got half a brain and he might be able to convince a few people,
Just half, eh?
Yeah, just half, And so we need to get him roped into this group, make him feel important, because Fetzer then split from Jones and invited me onto his so-called steering committee for this group.
Steering, for sure. Steering.
Oh, yeah, steering committee. That's when, I'm important now because I'm on the steering committee, folks. I'm a valued, intellect or something, and so I mean, that didn't really have any effect on me. I didn't feel important. I just thought, well, if he invites me, I'll go on it, but I don't really know what he's supposed to do. All it is a flipping website. It's, you don't need to steer a website. You just put stuff on it, and that's it. And they didn't really do anything. They didn't do any when Fetzer had split from Jones and formed the 9/11 Scholars, and Jones formed this group called 9/11 Scholars for Truth and Justice, and that was quite a chuckle, actually. And I think that site's still going, despite not really doing anything. It hasn't fought for any kind of justice, which, of course, is what Dr. Wood later did. And so, I thought, this is kind of... I knew there was something going on, but I just kind of thought, well, it's probably just how things are. I didn't. This was in 2007, really.
It's kind of hard to believe and piece together that there's these people that seem to be helping you and seem to be genuine, but at the same time, they're just. It's an eerie feeling, and we all experience it in our own lives. When you thought you knew people, and it turns out they were just using you for whatever purpose. So.
Well, this is it. I think but for me, it came to the point of where. Later on, I mean, I don't know whether you want to go a bit later, where we, Dr. Wood had been posting about the directed energy weapons research roughly for, let's see, about a year. And she'd been gathering more evidence, more pictures, some of the seismic data. And this is all on her website, drjudywood.com. And you can go and look on there and follow the links and so forth. A lot of the original picture libraries now, of course, have kind of moved on, because some of these picture sharing services have merged together or, got absorbed into Microsoft and whatnot.
Reverse image search. That's what happened for me. I just uploaded the image, reverse image. Sometimes if you crop it, didn't have as much luck. I believe you could could go to tineye.com.
Okay.
But the pictures, to doctor one picture here and there, it's a extremely time-consuming task. And
Yes.
and then when, to be honest, I have not found a doctor picture. The only thing that I've found that might have been doctored is something like when Stephen E. Jones released that one photo and he completely killed the contrast in it and made everything dark. Stuff like that you'll see. But there's no taking out rubble piles and putting in the background. What you see there is what happened there. And I think for people, it's what I did was I downloaded every picture that I could get my hands on. I ended up with 6,000 to 8,000, and I just took nights and I went through them one by one and looking for myself. And I recommend it to everybody, because that's what it's going to do is it's going to give you a timeline in your head of when things were and where they were. It's not for now. Somebody sees a picture and it's alien to them. They just say, okay, that's blah blah blah. But if you look at all the pictures in a sequential order, not even in a sequential order, your brain's going to automatically start putting things in together. Like the pictures right after, rust is not everywhere. You kind of automatically, that's an easy one, but you're saying, all right, this is earlier. The one that WTC 7 is still standing, that's at a certain time. So that's vital for everybody. You really need to know this information and know it well in order for you to talk about it, or else you're just gonna be like all the rest, where they'll see one glowing thing on the ground and say that it's fire and it's thermite, when paper that it's sitting on is completely fine. So
that's right. And I mean, this is one of the issues is that if you can understand it, then you can much better tie together, where, as you say, you can build up a map more easily of where these pictures fit and where these other pieces of evidence fit and where the witness testimony fits in. Does that fit in with, if you read Dr. Wood's book, for example, you'll find that some of the witness testimonies describe what is actually shown in some of the pictures, or what was next to where one of the pictures was taken. And you can say, oh, yeah, they must have been near that intersection, or near that car, sort of thing. So you can actually tie all this together. And I think this is making a general point here. This is one of the problems for the perpetrators of 9/11, because as something which has an official story and has the actual story of what happened, there is an awful lot of evidence available to show you what actually happened. Now, if you go back to, say, the JFK assassination, what have we got? Well, we've got the Zapruder film, and we've got, 100, 200, whatever it is, 300 witness testimonies tops. That's it. You don't have seismic data, you don't have weather data, you don't have events going on over a period of, let's see, from sort of 8:30 in the morning till, let's say 6 o'clock at night. The Kennedy assassination was over, what, in 10 minutes or something? Oh,
yeah, you didn't have people climbing all over taking pictures of the crime scene either.
Exactly.
The crime scene was destroyed practically. They took the limo away, so it's a lot harder to contain information now. And this is the age before cell phones. People think, well, wouldn't they have known? This was before the cell phones on camera back then. Oh, God, you wouldn't use them. Even the cameras, or the cell phone, I reversed it, but the cameras on cell phones, but even the cameras on cell phones that just took pictures, they were awful. You wouldn't get anything. You would, especially to sit there and have to focus. It just didn't happen back then. Yeah,
I mean, I said some of the cameras are pretty basic. I mean, there's some quite good ones then. One of the ones that comes up is the Sony Mavica camera, which was, I think there's one of the particular 9/11 pictures, which has, some people have tried to attach question marks to it, was actually taken on one of these Sony Mavica cameras. And they were special because they had a 3.5-inch floppy that you could put inside them. so that time was one of the only cameras on the market which you didn't have to buy an expensive kind of storage format for, and you could just put floppy disks in it.
Well, it was
so that's that was a technology then. You were looking at sort of 640 by 480 tops resolution almost. You might get up to, I mean, I had a Kodak camera then which was 1 megapixel. I had a DC 210 plus which was 1 megapixel. That was the sort of images back then that you were dealing with.
Exactly.